Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this Bible study this morning. We continue our sermon series, Coming into Focus, as we look at Mark and the movement of Jesus' ministry from baptism and calling disciples, and now into taking a look at some of the healing ministry that he's doing. So Scott is going to read for us today. So Scott, if you would read, please. Thank you.
The text today is Mark 1, 29 to 39, and it deals with a few different healings that occurred in Capernaum and then out into Galilee. As soon as they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons.
Thank you. Just a little bit more about Jesus' ministry. And I think for Mark, interesting for me, we are still in the first chapter of Mark, and so much has happened.
Yeah.
But it's all about movement. Jesus, he keeps moving. So he's moving from baptism into calling disciples. He's moving into ministry. He's moving into healing people.
Yeah.
And then he's also moving into making the decision that you don't stay at one place. The message has to go out further.
Right, yeah. So, as we often ask, what did you notice? What did you wonder? What stood out to you this time? And
well, you know, what was interesting to me is I just realized something. Even last week's text was the beginning of this week's text. So it all connects together. And what I went back and found this time is this. In verse 21 it says, they went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. He's in the synagogue teaching on the Sabbath. When he cleans the... Scandalous. And now he goes into... So after the synagogue, then, is a time of rest, which is why they go to Peter's home. Of course, Jesus doesn't have a home. Right. So they go to Peter's home, and Jesus heals then as well. It's on the Sabbath. But then, in verse 32 of the text we have for today, that evening at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons. But everyone else waited till the Sabbath ended to bring the people with them. So that was something that kind of struck me. And it doesn't appear in Mark as if there's anyone watching Jesus. It doesn't appear as if the religious leaders are watching him and coming down hard on him. Like, why did you heal that man in the synagogue and on the Sabbath? Absolutely. And why did you heal, Peter's mother-in-law? She doesn't even have a name. Why did you heal Peter's mother-in-law on the Sabbath?
So, like the text a week ago, an unnamed man at the synagogue who was healed. Now, Simon, Peter's mother-in-law, not given a name.
Unnamed.
So Mark, his focus is obviously to display Jesus' authority and power to heal and to cast out demons, even to the point that he's not wasting any time on naming who is being healed, but simply the act of healing. And perhaps, though, it was because it was mentioned that it was on the Sabbath day. Healing on the Sabbath seems to be the focus at the outset.
Right. And it's interesting, the very last verse here, 39, he says, and he went throughout Galilee proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. So that proclaiming, he also says that he has to go and preach and proclaim the word to others. Proclaim there seems to encompass much more than the speaking word.
Right.
So I think sometimes that when we say that we are proclaiming or preaching about the gospel, we assume that just means words.
Right.
And it doesn't. It clearly from this text, it is how do we move out into the world?
Yeah.
And how do we share, not just with words, but with actions? How do we share the good news?
Right, yeah. So obviously in Jesus' ministry, preaching and healing seem to be interconnected. And I wanted to ask then, how might that influence how the church looks and does ministry today? If the focus here in this one gospel was again, not only speaking, but acting, doing, healing, making life better for people, how do we, I don't think we've totally missed the point today, but I do think maybe we lean heavy on the talking and not the doing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for us it is a matter of how do we do, and this is always a sticking point for me, I think we do mercy ministry well. And that's going out and feeding the hungry and visiting the sick. You know, we do that well. The part that I think needs to be combined with that is the justice part. So Micah calls us to worship, to be kind, mercy, to be merciful, and to do justice. And the justice part then is working to change systems so that we sort of work our way out of mercy ministry.
Yeah.
Now, mercy ministry will always be there because of what Jesus proclaimed. The poor will always be with you, okay? So we will always have mercy ministry, but somehow there has to be a balance.
Right.
That we are attempting both to change systems so that we live in a more equitable world.
Somewhat the adage of give a man a fish, teach a man to fish, and feed him for life. That's a little bit trite, but yet still holds true that we will always have ways and means of handing out and being merciful, but if you don't combine it with helping people out of poverty or, again, addressing the systems on a government and societal level of what put people in poverty to begin with, then you've missed the justice component of it. So.
And I think that we fall into a trap that we do it because it makes us feel good.
Yeah.
And then, for me, that's a motive. Of course, we do feel good. I don't always come away from serving feeling good because of the justice side of it.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't always feel good is like, why are there so many people in this situation, in this world? So,
if you'll allow me to, I'll share kind of a story to that point. When I lived outside of Indianapolis, pre-kids and with more time on my way home to stop and help people instead of getting home to help with dinner, I would always pass. I was working in downtown Indianapolis at the newspaper, mid-2000s, and I would come home and I would always pass, often would pass a couple who would sleep outside on an embankment, and I felt bad for them. Like many of us do when we see a panhandler, I felt like, what could I do to help them? What can any of us do to help them? But I knew that most people passed them by, and I knew that they would sleep outside on that embankment that night. And one day I got up the nerve and I pulled over and I walked up to them and I asked if I could put them up in a hotel. And they took me up on that offer, and we loaded up their things into the back of my little SUV, and I took them maybe a mile, it wasn't even a mile away, to a hotel. And as we were packing up and I was taking them there, they were very thankful, but they also asked if I could buy them a pack of cigarettes. And, you know, a nicotine habit being what it is, it was not my goal in that day or that moment to talk to them about the health issues with smoking. And I said, yeah, I can do that. They needed that too. They needed not only a place to sleep, but he needed that nicotine fix. And I paid for them to stay at the hotel, and they went up, and then I left. And then I got maybe half a mile down the road, and I thought, I forgot about the cigarettes. And then I told him I would give him money for that. I went back to the hotel. I went up to the hotel room, knocked on the door, and I said, I told you that I would give you cigarette money, and I want to stay good to that. And he said, thank you. He said, I really thought that you're one of those people who was just trying to put a feather in his cap.
Ah, yes.
And that was such a profound statement to me, because I think we often want to put that feather in our cap when we help people. We do it, like you said, because it makes us feel good.
Right.
And I don't know what point I'm making, except to say in that moment I saw that justice ministry or mercy ministry need to kind of move beyond how it makes us feel, and we really need to truly think about who we're helping and try to almost step into their shoes for a moment.
And I think that's what Jesus is doing, quite honestly. It's when Jesus heals someone, he's not healing them so that they're better.
Yeah.
Jesus is healing them so that they are restored to community. I mean, that's the key here, because if you are unclean or if you are ill or no matter what it is, you're separated from community. You can't do what you're gifted to do, in a sense. So women especially get their feathers ruffled when we hear about Simon's mother-in-law, and it says that she's healed, and then she gets up and she serves them. Right, then the fever left her and she began to serve them. So we get a little bit ruffled by that, because come on, you guys, can't you serve her for a bit?
Yeah.
But that's taking it on its face value. If we dig deeper, the fact is that her role, her gift is hospitality. And when she had the fever, when she's ill, she can't be hospitable. And she takes that role seriously. The other thing is, it says, then the fever left her, and immediately she got up and she began to serve them. The point here for Mark is that she is definite. I mean, she's healed. For many of us, as we are healing, we get better in steps. Okay, and we may not feel like getting up, but eventually we do feel like it. Here it is that she is healed. I mean, there's no stepping into healing.
He's making that point
He's
immediately.
making that
She's
point
back
that the fever left her, and she could immediately join back into the community, into society. But she could also carry out her vocation. We talked about vocation, I believe, last week, and that it is what we are called to. She's called to this. She understands that this is her gift.
And again, from the womanist perspective too, if we want to dig deeper too, yes, problematic as it may seem that the men were not up helping to serve too, but that is only a compliment to Simon's mother-in-law, because Simon Peter, time and again, would be the one sitting, not speaking, not defending Jesus, not being his full true self. So if anything, it could be taken as a compliment to Simon's mother-in-law, definitely.
It also might mean that because it doesn't mention Simon's wife, Simon Peter's wife, that she's not there anymore.
Yeah.
That the mother-in-law is the one now who's running the household.
Yeah.
Who's taking care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so as she's laying there sick, not only is her physical body ill, but I'm sure that mentally she's feeling a piece of this too, of not being able to serve the way she can. And so this is so important because as Jesus restored the man last week to community, so Jesus restores Simon's mother-in-law to community, but also he restores her here. We don't know about the man. Here he restores her to her giftedness, to her vocation.
Yeah. So let's talk for a minute, maybe we'll conclude on this point about how even the demons knew who Jesus was. Last week and this week, the text is clear, Son of God, I know who you are. And this week, he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. So I find it maybe ironic that the demons knew who Jesus was, and yet his own disciples were not yet, or even until the resurrection, able to fully comprehend his full divinity. So I think too, we as modern day disciples sometimes also miss Jesus among us. But I find it very ironic and interesting that the demons knew who he was, and he wanted to silence them because maybe he didn't want his full identity to be known at that time. But particularly that the disciples time and again, didn't fully know what he was all about, but the demons did.
Yes, yes. And an interesting piece of perhaps the disciples having grown so law-oriented that they neglected to see what was happening in the world around them.
Yeah.
You know, that the demons, as it speaks here, as we say, evil exists, but they became so focused on what they were doing to save themselves, essentially, with the law, that they couldn't see what was around them. Yeah. I think that's where grace comes in, is that we know we're already saved, and hopefully our eyes are opened up that we can see the world around us, and that we can call out evil when we see it.
And that goes back to that justice piece, speaking out against evil, whether evil is inequality among people, inequality among incomes and housing and gender, but speaking out against the evils of the world. So, well, with that, why don't we conclude today, and plenty more to get through as we move into the ending of the season of Epiphany and into Lent. We thank you, as always, for being with us today, staying connected with us, and again, we hope to connect with you again throughout the week. Be well.